Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. We are excited to present the next topic in our webinar series, which today will be optimizing your Anthology applications and other systems for success. My name is Jessica Bonelli. I'm one of the account managers for Ferrilli. And before we get started, just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items for today's presentation. You should have joined the meeting on mute, so we do ask if you could stay on mute to reduce any background noise. We would appreciate that. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to use the chat button on your Zoom bar menu, and we can address those questions at the end of the session. Lastly, this session is being recorded, so we will be sending out the recording next week to all attendees, but feel free to still take notes if desired. Now, before I turn it over to our presenter today, I quickly want to give a high-level overview of Ferrilli for those that might not be familiar with us. Ferrilli is an end-to-end technology services provider that specifically serves the needs of higher education. We are agnostic when it comes to system, so we've worked with a variety of different ERP systems, HR payroll systems, CRMs, e-procurement, ResLife, really the list could go on there. And it's because of our team of higher education experts. So we have folks that have the technical and functional expertise that spreads across all departments of an institution. So we have enrollment experts, financial aid experts, records and reg, HR, advancement, the list goes on there. With Ferrilli, we do take a holistic view of each client scenario to deliver the best fit solution, because we know that not one solution fits all. And another thing about Ferrilli is we guarantee your complete satisfaction with any project that we do with you all. So our presenter today is Dan Mongeluzi. He is one of the directors on the Ferrilli team responsible for the Anthology client practice. So I'm going to turn things over to him.
Thank you, Jessica, and welcome everybody. I'm excited to give this presentation today to the Anthology folks that are out there to ensure that you're optimizing your system and using it to its full advantage. For those that may not know me, my name is Dan Mongeluzi. I've been in higher education for 20 years at this point, over 20 years. I spent 7 years as the Director of Development for SunGard Higher Education in their Power Campus product. And then for over the last 12 years, I've spent with Anthology Campus Management as a regional delivery director and other professional lead for their organization. Earlier this spring, I reached out to Rob Ferrilli, being attracted to his vision and purpose for serving higher education, felt that that matched up well with me and joined his organization earlier this year. And I'm excited to build out our Anthology practice. So what I have here is a survey that I'd like to ask folks to fill out quickly. When was the last time that you've had your system assessed? So was that months ago? Was it a couple of years ago? Do you not remember the last time that your system was assessed, or has it never been assessed? And we'll wait a couple minutes for everybody to give their input here. Okay. So based on the results that I'm seeing, few people said a couple of years, but 80% of folks said that they've never assessed their systems. And that is something that we do. That's the purpose of the call today. We want to talk about the value of assessing your system to understand how it can be optimized to meet the needs of your staff, your stakeholders, and the whole community, really. It's critical that you make this huge investment in a product and the time and the effort that it takes to do that implementation. And usually the implementation is only there because the prior system wasn't upkept. So to break that cycle, it's critical that we do this optimization check on a regular basis to ensure your success. And during this, the objective is to look at the infrastructure. We want to reduce the effort that folks are taking to do their jobs on a daily basis so that they can focus on other opportunities that can drive student success. We want to look at process alignment and ensure that it's defined, but it's also aligned and supporting where you want to go, what your vision is, what your mission is. We want to make sure that the system is sustainable. It's something that's going to be there for a long time so that you don't need to reinvest in 5 or 7 years, that this is something that you feel comfortable with and your staff feel comfortable with. It's critical that you reduce costs. There's so many financial impacts on universities today that investing in technology more than you need to is really a waste of money. The other thing is that we want to improve morale. Your staff, they've taken the time to implement the solution. They've utilized the system for a period of time, and they want to see that the system continues to work with them and not against them. So there's some of the things that we're going to be discussing during today's session. And we'll go through these individually, line by line. So first, from an infrastructure standpoint, for some of you, this is the first time that you've been on a cloud solution. And there are definitely differences between what you may have experienced with an on-prem solution versus what you're facing today on a cloud environment. How is that impacting your organization? What tweaks do you need to do in your business process that will allow you to get the freedom that you've had previously? While there's many benefits to why you go to a cloud environment, there's also some limitations that you need to work around. How are you working around those? Do you have access to the data that you had before? Are you able to pull the reports that you've been able to pull before? Is that information available to the folks that need that information? From a security standpoint, how are the accounts being created? And probably more important is, how are accounts being shut down? With folks leaving your organization, do you have a secure system? Are you sure that folks are being logged out of the system and not logged out, but accounts being disabled at the appropriate times? From a solutions review, what we offer is an opportunity to look at your solutions that you have in place. Are you utilizing the latest technologies? Do you have a mobile view? Do students have a mobile view of their information and access to the information available? What are the portal options that are available to you? Are you using that effectively to target the students in an effective way? Occupation Insight. Anthology offers an excellent product called Occupation Insight. And, is that something that you're evaluating? Those tools that could be of value of you, a lot of times they're secondary in the implementation phase, and we never think about going back and implementing anything beyond that cursory implementation. So doing evaluations of those types of products and making sure that you're taking advantage of everything that you could take advantage of is critical. From a licensing standpoint, you want to review this on a regular basis. What does your Microsoft contract look like? What does your Anthology contract look like? Are you being charged on a certain count? Is it a full-time equivalent student count? Is it based on the number of users that you have going into the system? That needs to be assessed on a regular basis to ensure that you're not paying more than you should be paying for your solution. From a standpoint of reducing your effort, maximizing the efficiency of what people are putting into the system, what you want to do is a departmental assessment. You want to sit down with each of the departments and understand what's going right, what's going wrong with the system. How are the systems blocking them from doing their day-to-day operations? What difficulties are they facing? A lot of times when you're doing the implementation, we gather the requirements and that's what's implemented. But year after year, there are changes in the way your organization runs, especially over the last year, 18 months. The way that you're doing things today is definitely different than it was 18 months ago. Have you evaluated your system to ensure that you're in alignment and supporting those new processes that have to be in place today? A lot of times it's done without a lot of consideration. There's maybe not a change management process in place. And the result is that you make a tweak to the way that you're doing things, but is it the right one? Is there an assessment or a review to make sure that that's really meeting the needs of you, your students, everybody in the community? Cross-departmental impact is a huge thing. During the implementation, we found a lot of times that there was a disconnect between departments. And now with these tweaks that we're making in the system, without that change management guidance there, we're making changes now to the system that affect other departments. And we go back to that method where we're not talking to each other. We're not talking between departments, and we're creating gaps in the solution that we have. And while that might be fine over a year or 2 years, when it goes over 2 or 4 years, it just keeps multiplying. From an integrated solution standpoint, are your systems integrated effectively? Are you still, and are you expanding the use of your systems? So that occupation insight solution that I mentioned earlier, is that something that can be pulled into the mix that will allow you to do things and offer something more to your students than you did before? Conversely, have you customized something? Are you using other systems or other spreadsheets or anything outside of the system that's not effective? Why are you using those things? So that type of evaluation needs to happen. Thinking about that, ensuring that the process alignment is there and ensuring quality in your system, we want to talk about the processes. Are we documenting the processes? There's fewer people that are doing more jobs on campus. And it's critical that you have documentation in place that gets passed on to the new folks that are coming along. Or if somebody's out for the day, is there somebody that can step up and handle that job and do the needs, the responsibilities of that role for that day? A lot of times you're handed user guides that are not customized towards your specific needs. The user guides are just general guides, and a lot of times documented processes that are specific to your organization would be more effective and offer some confidence to the folks that are operating the system. From a reporting standpoint, again, do you have access to the data that you need? Power BI, are you utilizing Power BI? A lot of people talk about wanting to use Power BI and the analytic features, but few are doing it effectively. So evaluation of what can be offered by a Power BI solution is critical to an assessment and optimizing your system. From a data accuracy standpoint, during an implementation, there's possibly some data that you go into the new system. A lot of times you're going to clean it up during the implementation process, but sometimes you opt to bring that data into the system with an expectation that you will clean it up there. Is that data being cleaned up? Have you taken the steps necessary to ensure that the data is not going to get stale and out of date? Are you doing an assessment of your 1098-T data or your W-2 data? Rather than waiting until the end of the year, it's important that this time of year you're doing an assessment of what data is in your system and how it would look. A lot of times, depending on when you're going live with your implementation, you don't even talk about the 1098-T, those end of year processes. And it's critical that you take a look and know what data is in your system. And then from an upgrade plan, now that we're on cloud environments and updates are being pushed out, what is the test plan that you have in place? Do you have a test plan in place? When we get these upgrades, you want to make sure, because they're configurable systems, You want to make sure that it's operating the way that you need for your functionality. And for that reason, you want to have a test plan. You want to run through common functionality with each release that comes up. And that only expands if you have integrations or other customizations that you're relying on. From a quality and process standpoint, communication is key. You know, are all the groups talking together? Are there formal guides? In case of emergency, does everybody know what everybody else is doing? And process alignment is critical towards that. Okay, speaking of sustainable systems, again, with the investment that we're making in systems, it's critical that you invest this money, that you utilize the system as effective as possible, that it's not something that's going to have to be replaced in a short time window. There's no reason that a system couldn't last, 10 or 20 years. The technology, your vendor should be staying up on latest technology. They should be offering you new functionality. So you want to look at the vendor's roadmap. What enhancements are coming? What enhancements do you need? Is there an option for you to look and offer suggestions for what should be on the roadmap? And if you're not getting your voice heard, how can you influence to make sure that what you're asking for is needed? How do you work with other customers to ensure that that new functionality is something that would be valuable to many? Because that typically is what gets introduced into the product. Change management came up a couple of times in the discussion so far. It's critical that you have a meeting on a regular basis that discusses this information. So once you do have an assessment, once you do get together, that you can continue to optimize the system on a regular basis. And what that requires is that all your departments come together, they talk about what's going right and what's going wrong, and there's a discussion about those items to ensure that there's a path forward for improvement. So whether that's a monthly meeting or a biweekly meeting, it's critical that the teams continue to get together. During the implementation process, everybody was brought in together, everybody was trained on the system together, made decisions together. But a lot of times what we see is once the implementation is over, everybody goes back to their day jobs, everybody tries to run and catch up to the new software that's implemented, and these meetings go to the side. And that's definitely something that you want to continue to enforce within your organization, and make sure that everybody keeps an eye on what everybody else is doing. Functional currency is another factor. Are you looking at what's happening in the market? Are you offering the right functionality? Are you doing things more efficiently like other schools are doing? Because if you're impacting your students with any functional needs, that's going to be detrimental to your organization. From a customization standpoint, you want to minimize the customizations. There are integrations, there are custom reports that you must have. And there needs to be an evaluation to ensure that they're truly needed. If they are truly needed, then that's reasonable. But there's many customizations or integrations that are used that could be implemented utilizing functionality that may be added to the system or is available in the system. You just weren't implemented with that functionality in the beginning. It was considered a phase 2 item or something that we would look into after the implementation. During the implementation, we all have these great ideas about what we want to do after the implementation is complete, but is there follow through to make sure that those tasks are complete? The value that it was going to offer to you is never achieved if you don't implement those features. And then the technical viability, again, speaking of your vendors, are they using the latest technology? Are you looking out for the latest technology? You know, Power BI, again, is a good example of something where, you know, today, custom reports, sharing reports between schools, those types of things should be available and should be things that you're considering versus just the standard out of the box solutions that are being offered. And, you know, again, pushing your vendor if they're not staying up to date on the latest technology. Are they staying up on security patches? There's a responsibility that you have to make sure that your vendor is taking into consideration the latest regulations related to security, PCI compliance, and so forth. Another thing we want to do is minimize costs. What you want to do is you need to come up with a plan for how you can defend the cost of what you're spending on your systems. So the license cost, we talked earlier about whether it's based on a student count or a user count. If you're seeing a declining enrollment, you definitely want to get back in touch with your vendors and let them know that there's been a change on campus, that it's affecting you financially, and that you need to renegotiate your license cost. Having some information from outside sources that can support the information that you're providing to them would be helpful. What are the service costs that it's taking to do the work that you're trying to achieve? If you want to do a retraining, what is the cost that's associated with that? How is that going to, what's the return that you're getting for that training? Support cost. What does it cost to support the main systems? What does it support the integrations, the customizations that you have out there? These should be evaluated, and there may be other options for how you get this work completed without the contracts that you currently have in place. There may be cheaper options. There may be better options for what you're doing. There may be reduced options. Hardware costs. With folks going remote, I'm sure that's increased a lot of hardware budgets. So what is the true cost? What is the true need for somebody to be remote? And how is that being assessed? When is that being assessed? How can it be adjusted to reduce your cost? From a training cost perspective, you want to evaluate how often you need to train people. Do you have a lot of turnover that's causing you to retrain folks? Do you have people switching between positions where you need to train folks? And again, speaking to that documentation, having the processes documented will allow you to reduce the training cost. If you have good documentation to hand to somebody to understand the responsibilities that they have in the system, you'll be able to reduce your training cost over time. And then from a team cost, let's evaluate what it takes to work in the system that you have in place. Is it effective for you? If it's taking 2 or 3 people to do the job that you could do more efficiently with one person, we need to evaluate and identify those areas of the system so that we can determine maybe this is an area of the system that we need to shut off. Maybe this system is not functioning for us. Or maybe you're doing it outside of the system and you should be doing it inside the system. So the team cost, what it takes to operate that system, needs to be evaluated and considered when making decisions. Another objective that we're trying to achieve is improving morale. Again, during the implementation, there's a great stress on the morale of the staff as they're doing this implementation while they're doing their day job. And if everybody feels that that was for nothing, then there's going to be even additional morale hit to your staff. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your employees are giving their input. Just the option of being heard about what they don't like, what they do like about the system, offering that suggestion of how the system impacts their job on a day-to-day basis, just that alone will improve your morale. That cross-departmental awareness, showing that care between departments would be valuable for your staff also. The investment in this assessment, I believe, is another area of morale improvement. Showing that you care about continuous improvement will lead the staff to agree or to come and work with you to improve the system. Otherwise, it's just going to be a system that we use. This is the system that we're required to use, and it just sits there and we just keep doing what we're told to do with the system. And having that documentation is really a comfort blanket for the team. You know, there may be functions within the system that don't happen on a daily basis, that it would be valuable to be confident that they can go to a personalized document where they can pick it up and know the exact steps. So the next part of the presentation, I'm going to talk about our process. What do we do? Ferrilli offers an assessment. We'll develop a plan, and then we'll execute on that plan. So let's step through that. The first part of the process is an assessment focus. And we can look at your student system. We can look at your CRM, finance, your HCM, payroll solutions, your third-party solutions, LMS solutions. Some of the areas that we will analyze beyond what's listed here, you know, there's so many other areas that we want to assess. We want to look at your campaigns. You know, what are you doing from a CRM standpoint? Maybe we want to look at your event management. What are you doing from an open house standpoint? So this is just a brief list of some of the things that we're going to assess during this optimization project. So the components of the assessment are, the first step would be a requirements review. And that's where we sit down with you. We understand what systems you're utilizing today, understand what the state of it is. You know, is it working well for you? Are there problems that you're facing with it from an overall standpoint? And then we can work on the scope of what we're going to cover during our assessment. The second part is to do an interview-based approach. And what we want to do is we're going to want to meet with each of the departments that are being assessed and understand and get their input and start to build that morale with those folks. And this may expand beyond the users of the system. So we may want to get students involved. We might want to get alumni involved. We can go out into the community to get a full understanding of how the systems are impacting the organization or the view of the organization. We'll do a review of your systems. We'll get into the systems. We'll do an assessment. Ferrilli has folks across the board who know all the different systems out there, or many of the systems out there. You know, if you're utilizing other third-party solutions, I'm sure that there's somebody on staff that we can get to do an assessment to make sure that it's set up and that you're utilizing it effectively. And for the areas that we uncover that have a problem, we can determine how we can solve that problem. What we will do at that point, after we do the requirements review, after we do the reviews, the interviews, and we do the system review, we're going to write a draft report, and we will bring it back to your organization and identify this as a draft report. And we'll ask for your review at that point and to come back and make any clarifications to us if you think we totally missed the ball on anything. Based on that feedback, we may need to do some additional questions. We'll do a final draft of our recommendations at that point. And then what we would like to do is come back to the organization and do a formal presentation to the folks that have participated, or to whatever subset of that group you choose to present our findings. And we will go through the same items that were discussed today and explain the value of the assessment and where everything fits in. So Ferrilli we have higher education focused people. We have senior resources that have been with Ferrilli for a long time, or have been in higher education for a long time, that know these systems. We have people that have worked on many systems, and that's critical. The assessment can happen from anybody, but I think it's a great value to have somebody independent come in, somebody who's not going to have any preconceived notions of what's happening right or what's going wrong. Nobody's going to judge. Somebody independent will not judge your staff as they give their input. They may be more free to give their input. We also, for myself, during the course of my career, I've worked with more than 350 unique schools at this point, whether that's, my time with Power Campus and working with all those schools, or my time with campus management. I've seen what's worked for schools. I've seen what has not worked for schools. And I think that type of experience that the Ferrilli team can bring to you is valuable to offer you guidance and other suggestions that may not be considered within your organization. So the outcome that we're looking for at the end of this assessment is that you have a stable infrastructure, you're saving time and money, you're minimizing the effort and maximizing the efficiency of your staff, you have quality improvements, you're improving the morale of your staff, and you're helping to sustain, you're helping to have sustainable processes and solutions for the long term. And with that, I want to open it up for questions.
Thank you, Dan. So far, no questions in the chat window, so feel free to either still type the questions in, or if you want to come off of mute and ask live, you can certainly do that. And while people are thinking of a potential question, just want to remind folks that this is a recorded session, so you will get a copy of this for your records, like I said, early next week, just to refer back to if needed. And a good place for you all to look for upcoming things that are happening at Ferrilli on our website, ferrilli.com/what's happening. That is where you will see upcoming webinars, as well as maybe conferences we'll be attending, events that we're hosting, as well as our past recorded demos or webinars. So you'll be able to find a lot of information, a lot of content on that page, should there be interest in other areas. We're always looking for topics that you think are of interest. So if there's something that you think we should present on, we always welcome those suggestions, and you can send that to info@ferrilli.com. Or if you think of a question after today's session has ended, you could also send it there, and you will get all of the account managers to be able to respond back to you. So I'm not seeing any additional questions. So we do appreciate everyone's time this afternoon. And like I said, we will be in touch with the recording. And if there's anything else that we can do for you, please feel free to reach out to us at any point. Thank you again.
Thank you.